On June 27, 1964, on the coast of North Vietnam, a 7-man demolition team landed by rubber boat. Their mission was to destroy a bridge in Thanh Hoa province, part of a larger plan to end the support of North Vietnam for communists in the south. But Operations Plan 34 Alpha failed, and its failure led to the escalation of the war. This channel's mission is to challenge the Vietnam orthodoxy through reference to primary sources. Much of what you know about the Vietnam War is either incomplete or false. Please consider supporting this channel and its mission through Patreon. The link is in the description. National Security Memorandum 52 was approved on May 11, 1961 by President John F. Kennedy. NSAM 52 directed an increase in covert operations against North Vietnam. South Vietnamese agents had been penetrating North Vietnam from the late 1950s, but United States involvement had been limited until the beginning of 1960, when President Diem gave the Americans a much greater role in covert operations against the North. Now, as well as inserting agents into North Vietnam, heavily armed teams would be parachuted into the mountainous interior. The first missions were flown by personnel from the South Vietnamese Air Force, under Colonel Nguyen Cao Ky. Later missions were flown by pilots from Taiwan, contracted by Viet, a Vietnamese private air transport corporation. Viet was set up by William Colby, head of CIA Far East operations, to provide plausible deniability of American involvement. Teams began to be dropped into North Vietnam in the first half of 1961. The drops were sporadic, and the White House and State Department asked for more numerous and more aggressive operations. However, the CIA found this difficult to accomplish, and indeed almost all of those dropped were captured soon after they landed. In August 1960, Saigon sent 18 men to Taiwan for training in underwater operations. Ngo Dinh Can then visited Taiwan in February 1961 to arrange the dispatch of 20 instructors to Da Nang and Vung Tau. The Lien Doi Nuar Nai, or Frogman Unit, was formally established in July. Its nucleus the successful students sent to Taiwan in 1960. 3 LDNN commandos in scuba gear swam into the mouth of the Giang River and onto Quan Cay on the night of June 30th, July 1st, 1961. Quan Cay was a base for North Vietnamese gunboats, and the Frogmen attached limpet mines to boats, causing serious damage to 2. However, the commandos were either killed or captured, and their boat was pursued and sunk by a 3rd North Vietnamese gunboat. The CIA reported that there were several hundred military and paramilitary personnel from Taiwan present in South Vietnam, with plans to increase the numbers. Many worked as flight crews on the transport aircraft, dropping agents into the north, while others worked in intelligence, listening in on North Vietnamese radio transmissions and training the South Vietnamese to do the same. Colby had become disenchanted with operations against North Vietnam by August 1963, but he was reluctant to terminate the program. In January 1963, the Joint Chiefs of Staff sent a team of senior officers, led by General Earl Wheeler, to South Vietnam to evaluate the progress of the war. Among their recommendations was that we should do something to make the North Vietnamese bleed. In May, Admiral Harry G. Felt, SINCPAC, was directed to produce a plan for hit-and-run operations against North Vietnam. The operations would be carried out by the South Vietnamese with US assistance. The JCS approved a preliminary draft, Operations Plan 34-63, on August 14th, and again after modifications on September 9th. The plan was discussed at a conference on Vietnam strategy in Honolulu on November 20th. Colby told Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara that putting teams into North Vietnam did not work. However, his advice was dismissed, and it was decided a larger military effort would produce better results. The CIA and MACV had worked out a modified version of the plan by December 15th, which was designated Op Plan 34 Alpha. The plan proposed 4 categories, which increased in severity from harassment to aerial attacks which would be sufficient to cripple North Vietnam's industrial development. On December 12, McNamara told Ambassador Lodge that President Johnson wanted plans for covert operations by South Vietnamese forces with support from the US. The plan should include various levels of pressure which were intended to demonstrate to North Vietnam that the US would not accept a communist victory in the South. The aim of Op Plan 34 Alpha was to convince North Vietnam that it should end its support and direction of the war in South Vietnam and Laos. But the authors of the plan expected the North to retaliate for attacks with an escalation of its support for communist violence. They warned that the US should be ready with supporting actions to offset any such reaction. An interdepartmental Washington committee, chaired by Marine Corps Major General Victor Krulak, Special Assistant for Counterinsurgency and Special Activities to the JCS, selected the less risky options from the CIA/MACV plan and drafted a 12-month document which included 3 phases of increasing intensity. President Johnson approved the modified plan on January 16, 1964, and ordered that the modest Phase 1 be implemented from February to May. Ambassador Lodge briefed Zung Van Minh, President of South Vietnam, on Op Plan 34 Alpha on January 21st. The maritime operations conducted during the 4 months were a disappointment, and on May 19th the JCS submitted a list of operations for the second phase to the Secretary of Defense. The list was less ambitious than the recommendations Major General Krulak had made in January, or the proposals made by the JCS on May 19th. Instead, they were based on an evaluation of the situation and the capabilities of the available forces. The Special Operations Group was established on January 24, 1964, and was given responsibility for covert operations against the North. In late 1964, its name was changed to the Studies and Observations Group, or SOG, and it was often referred to as MACV-SOG or MAC-SOG to indicate its connection to MACV. What had been CIA operations supported by the military were now military operations supported by the CIA. The South Vietnamese equivalent to SOG was the Strategic Technical Service, established on February 12, 1964, and later renamed the Strategic Technical Directorate. Planning and operational control was retained by the US, but overall planning concepts were coordinated between SOG and the STD, although there was little coordination on proposed operations, their authorization or scheduling. Coordination between SOG and STD on air operations against North Vietnam during 1964 was difficult, as US security regulations made it impossible for STD personnel to visit SOG working areas. The South Vietnamese Coastal Security Service was a subordinate group, and a counterpart to the US Naval Advisory Detachment in Danang. CCS officers participated with the NAD in planning and in briefing and debriefing mission personnel. A base for maritime raids against North Vietnam was established at My Cay. My Cay was just outside Danang, forming the east coast of the Tien Sa Peninsula from Monkey Mountain south to Marble Mountain. The docks for the vessels that carried the raiding parties north were located at the foot of Monkey Mountain. The facilities had spread for a considerable distance along the beach by early 1964. Small camps housed 20 or 30 men, one for South Vietnamese Marines, one for LDNN, and one for Nung, an ethnic group originally from the highlands of North Vietnam. American Navy SEALs trained all the groups in rubber boat and scuba techniques, cross-beach operations, and explosive demolition. Until the end of 1963, raiding parties were transported in motorized junks. The junks were then replaced by faster Norwegian and American-made boats. Raids were dispatched to Quan Cay in November and December 1963 and February and March 1964, with the objective of sinking enemy vessels. However, the raids failed and many of the participants were lost. The SEAL detachment rotated out around the end of February 1964, and a new detachment was led by Lieutenant Cathal Flynn. 3 additional SEALs were added to the 12-man detachment later, and 4 US Marines worked with them at My Cay. In the first half of 1964, the Navy sent 8 larger boats to South Vietnam, designated Fast Patrol Boats or PTFs. 2 were old patrol torpedo boats with their torpedo tubes removed. Doubts were expressed in Danang and Saigon about their suitability, and indeed they were found to be unsafe. Their use also broke the policy that no weapons or equipment of American origin should be used in raids in the north. The remaining 6 were new Nasty class boats, which had been purchased from Norway and were designed as fast vessels for short-range defence of national waters. After the war escalated, when it was no longer important to conceal American involvement, the PT boats were replaced by American-made boats that were similar to the Nasty. The boats were controlled by a US Navy Mobile Control Support Team at Mequay, which was responsible for the training and supervision of the crews. SOG controlled the boats and men in combat operations. A variety of different nationalities and ethnicities seem to have been involved in the covert operations. The 3 Swift boats each had a Norwegian captain recruited in Norway, who also served as navigator. The Norwegians arrived in August 1963 and left the following July when their contracts expired. After their departure, they were replaced by Chinese officers. Landing parties operating from the Swift boats were nominally Montagnards, but included men from other parts of Asia. The plan had been to fill key positions on the PTFs with Germans, but their contracts seem to have been terminated due to excessive consumption of alcohol. Their replacements were Vietnamese, as were the landing parties operating from the PTFs. And although there was a prohibition against US personnel taking part in the raids, it's quite likely that American crews did sometimes participate in the missions. The chain of command controlling the raids was entirely American. The US explicitly excluded the South Vietnamese Navy from involvement in Op Plan 34 Alpha, with the exception of agencies dedicated to covert operations. As 1964 progressed, the intensity of the infiltration of small raiding parties into North Vietnam increased. But losses were heavy. On March 12th and 15th, all of the men attempting to attach limpet mines to vessels in Quan Cay were killed or captured. 2 parties landed on the coasts of Ha Tinh and Quang Binh provinces on May 16th and 17th respectively, with the mission of attacking the bridges on Highway 1, the main coastal road. Both operations failed, and the raiding parties each lost 2 men. 2 airdrop teams, Attila and Lotus, were captured in April and May. During their trial, the North Vietnamese claimed to have captured 9 such groups since the start of the year. The more successful groups were landed by sea. 2 groups conducted raids on June 12. One attacked a militia post, and the second blew up the Han Bridge in Thanh Hoa province. Then on the night of June 26-27th, a 7-man demolition team, supported by 24 South Vietnamese Marines, destroyed another bridge in Thanh Hoa province. On June 30th, July 1st, another raiding party, landed by PTF 5 and PTF 6 shortly after midnight, attacked a reservoir pump house near the mouth of the Kien River using 57mm recoilless rifles. The PTFs shelled attacking North Vietnamese forces with their 20 and 40mm guns, allowing the landing force to withdraw. In response to these activities, the North Vietnamese were strengthening their coastal defences, and by the beginning of August, the landing parties were simply firing at their targets from the PTFs. As a consequence, the PTF's weapons were upgraded to 90 or 106mm recoilless rifles and 81mm mortars. As the tempo of operations increased, U-2s, operating from Bien Hoa Air Base, provided photographic intelligence for Op Plan 34 Alpha raids. Returning from a trip to South Vietnam in March 1964, Robert McNamara remarked that Op Plan 34 Alpha was a program so limited that it is unlikely to have any significant effect. When asked to evaluate the plan, Admiral Felt, SINCPAC, stated that the raids had not accomplished much and that aerial bombing and mining would be much more effective. On February 20th, President Johnson ordered that contingency planning for pressures against North Vietnam should be speeded up. Particular attention should be given to shaping such pressures so as to produce a maximum credible deterrent effect on Hanoi. Contingency planning for bombing North Vietnam would continue for the next year.